The morning had started like any other winter day. Snowflakes floated gently from the sky, covering the neighborhood in a soft white blanket. The streets were quiet, except for the occasional sound of someone shoveling their driveway or scraping ice off a car windshield. The main character had woken up to this peaceful scene and felt a sense of calm wash over them. There was something special about the first snowfall of the season. It made everything look fresh, clean, and almost magical. They put on a warm coat, gloves, and a hat, ready to spend some time outside. The idea of building a snowman had been lingering in their mind for a while, and today seemed perfect. The snow was just the right texture, not too powdery, not too wet. They grabbed a carrot, some old buttons, and a scarf they had kept from last year. As they stepped out into the yard, the crunch of snow beneath their boots added to the excitement. It felt like a small adventure. Even though it was happening right at home, rolling the first large snowball was harder than they thought. Snow stuck to their gloves, their hands got cold, and their cheeks were bright red from the chill. But as the ball grew bigger and heavier, there was a sense of accomplishment. Then came the second ball, slightly smaller, which would form the middle of the snowman. They carefully stacked it on top of the first, making sure it was stable. The final ball for the head was a little tricky, but after a few tries and a lot of effort, it was in place. The snowman was standing tall, looking proud in the middle of the yard. They added the carrot nose, buttons for eyes and a mouth, and wrapped the scarf around its neck. Step back, admire the work. It wasn't the biggest snowman in the world, but it was perfect to them. The snowman seemed almost alive, a cheerful presence in the quiet morning. They laughed, taking a step back to see it from every angle. This was their little creation, a piece of joy in the middle of a cold winter day. Just as they were finishing, they heard the crunch of footsteps on the sidewalk outside their yard. They looked up and saw the HOA president walking briskly toward them. The main character had seen her before, always looking stern, always carrying a clipboard. She was known for being very strict with the rules, often pointing out small details that no one else seemed to notice. Most people in the neighborhood avoided unnecessary contact with her. Today it seemed she had noticed the snowman. She stopped at the edge of the yard and stared. The main character waved politely, hoping to keep things friendly. But the look on her face was hard to read. It wasn't exactly anger, but it wasn't approval either. Her lips were pressed together, eyes scanning the snowman like she was inspecting it for some hidden flaw. "This isn't allowed," she said, voice sharp. "You know the guidelines about decorations, right?" The main character felt a knot form in their stomach. Guidelines for decorations in winter? Especially about something as harmless as a snowman. It didn't make sense. "I thought that applied to permanent decorations," they replied cautiously. "This is just a snowman. It'll melt in a few days." Her eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules. I'll have to make a note of this. You might get a fine if it stays up too long." The main character tried to keep their voice calm, but a flicker of frustration passed through them. "It's literally just snow. It's not permanent. It's not harming anyone." She didn't respond. Instead, she wrote something in her notebook and walked away, leaving a faint trail in the snow. The main character watched her go, feeling a mix of confusion and irritation. It was hard to believe that something so simple, something that brought joy, could cause tension. Despite the encounter, they decided to focus on the positive. The snowman stood proudly, scarf fluttering slightly in the wind. The sun peeked through the clouds, making the snow sparkle like tiny diamonds. Children from nearby houses began to venture out, throwing snowballs at each other and laughing. The sound was infectious, and the main character smiled, glad for the little moment of normalcy. As the day went on, they noticed other neighbors taking photos of their own snowmen, enjoying the winter day. Some waved politely, others just nodded in greeting. It felt like a small community moment, a brief pause from the usual busyness and concerns. Yet, in the back of their mind, they couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA president would be back. There was a sense of unease, like the calm morning was only temporary. By afternoon, Snowman had attracted a little more attention. Neighbors walking dogs or taking a stroll would stop and smile. Some commented on how cheerful it looked, and the main character felt a quiet pride. It wasn't about showing off. It was about creating something that brought a moment of happiness in the cold. And yet every time they glanced toward the street, they half expected to see the stern figure of the HOA president returning late in the afternoon. The sun began to dip behind the rooftops, casting long shadows over the neighborhood. The snowman, now glowing slightly in the golden light, looked even more lifelike. The main character sat on the porch steps, sipping hot chocolate, feeling content despite the earlier tension. They watched the neighborhood from their spot, seeing families enjoying the snow, hearing the distant sound of laughter and sleds sliding down small hills. The phone buzzed in their pocket. A message from a neighbor who had noticed the interaction with the HOA president. "She's making a big deal about the snowman. Be careful," it read. The main character sighed but felt determined not to let this ruin their day. This was supposed to be fun, a small escape from rules and expectations. They decided to enjoy the moment while it lasted, knowing that snowmen, like joy, didn't stay forever. Evening came, and the sky turned a deep shade of blue. The streetlights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the snow. The snowman stood tall in the yard, its button eyes catching the light. The main character went inside briefly to warm up, but kept glancing out the window. There was a feeling in the air, a mix of serenity and anticipation. It was clear that this snowman, innocent as it was, had already started something much bigger than they had expected. As night fell, they bundled up again and stepped outside. The snow had softened underfoot, muffling sounds and making the neighborhood seem even quieter. They added a small stick broom in the snowman's hand, a little detail that made it even more charming. They stood back, smiling, thinking that this simple creation had brought a strange mix of joy and challenge to the day, before heading inside for the night. They took a deep breath of crisp winter air. There was a feeling that the calm of the morning had given way to something unpredictable. The HOA president had made it clear she wouldn't ignore this. The main character knew that the next day might bring more conflict. Yet for tonight, they allowed themselves to enjoy the snow, the quiet, and the simple magic of the season. The snowman, standing proud and silent in the yard, seemed to promise that even small joys could hold their ground, no matter how strict or unreasonable someone tried to be. As they went to bed, they kept thinking about the snowman and the strange tension it had caused. It was just snow, yet it had stirred strong emotions. They knew that whatever happened next, they were ready to face it. The snowman had become more than a simple winter decoration. It had become a symbol of standing up quietly, of finding joy in small things, and of preparing for the unexpected. With that thought, sleep came slowly, but with a sense of resolve and anticipation for the days ahead. The morning after the first encounter with the HOA president, the main character woke up to a bright, clear sky. The snow had settled overnight, creating a fresh layer over the streets and yards. It was beautiful, almost like the neighborhood had been transformed into a winter wonderland. They felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they remembered the conversation from the day before. The snowman stood in the yard, still perfect and untouched, but they knew it wouldn't be long before the HOA president returned. They decided to spend some time outside, hoping to enjoy the morning before any confrontation. Rolling snow into small shapes for little additions to the snowman, they added tiny snowballs around the base, imagining them as little snow pets. It was a playful touch that made them smile despite the unease. Children from nearby houses noticed and ran over, their laughter filling the yard. They began making their own small snow creations, inspired by the larger snowman. The main character joined in, helping shape tiny figures, feeling a sense of connection with the neighborhood that was rare in everyday life. But the sense of calm didn't last long. Around mid-morning, the sound of shoes crunching on snow made them pause. Looking up, they saw the HOA president walking along the sidewalk again. This time, she was carrying a camera and a notebook, and her expression was even sterner than before. She stopped at the edge of the yard and focused her attention on the snowman, snapping pictures from different angles. The main character tried to stay calm, greeting her politely, but she barely acknowledged them. "This is in violation of the HOA rules," she said sharply, not lowering her camera. "You were warned yesterday, yet the snowman remains." You may face fines or further action if this continues." The main character took a deep breath. "It's just snow. It will melt naturally. I don't see how it could harm anyone or break any real rule." Her eyes narrowed. "Rules are rules. I am simply enforcing them." Neighbors peeked from behind curtains or came out to watch from a distance, some whispering to each other. The main character felt a wave of frustration, but tried to keep their tone steady. "I understand your position, but this is temporary, harmless, and part of the winter season. There is no damage being done." She wrote something in her notebook and continued photographing the snowman. "I will have to report this. You have been given ample notice." Then, without another word, she walked away, leaving behind a trail of disturbance in the snow and a rising tension that felt heavy in the air. The main character sighed. Knowing that any attempt to reason with her would be difficult, they decided to continue enjoying the morning, adding small details to the snowman and letting the neighborhood kids play nearby. Despite the intrusion, the joy of the snow remained, and the laughter of children made it easier to push aside the irritation. It was a small victory, standing firm against unnecessary rules, and a reminder that not every problem needed to ruin the moment. As the day progressed, more neighbors began noticing the snowman and the conflict. Some approached cautiously, asking questions about the interaction with the HOA president. The main character explained what had happened, careful to remain polite and neutral. Several neighbors expressed sympathy, but admitted they didn't want to get involved. There was an unspoken understanding that the HOA president could be intimidating, and most people preferred to avoid confrontation. By mid-afternoon, the tension escalated further. A letter appeared in the mailbox, stamped with the HOA logo. The main character retrieved it, opening it with a sense of dread. The letter outlined a formal complaint and warned of fines if the snowman was not removed immediately. The words felt excessive for something as innocent as a snowman. They read the letter carefully, noticing how vague some of the language was, and realized that the HOA president was using every possible tool to assert control. Feeling determined not to be intimidated, the main character made a plan. They decided to document everything, from the condition of the snowman to each interaction with the HOA president. Photographs, videos, and notes became their shield, a way to protect themselves from unfair treatment. At the same time, they continued to add playful elements to the snowman, making it look cheerful and harmless, almost as if mocking the unnecessary scrutiny. It was a quiet rebellion, a way to stand firm without escalating the situation unnecessarily. By late afternoon, the sun was lower, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. The snow glistened in golden light, and the snowman looked almost magical. The main character sat on the porch, sipping warm tea and watching the neighborhood. Children played, neighbors passed by, and the world seemed peaceful, except for the tension that lingered from the HOA president's interference. They knew it wouldn't end with just warnings and letters. This was the beginning of something that would test patience and creativity. Around evening, the HOA president returned unexpectedly. This time, she had brought a small group of her board members. They walked onto the sidewalk, cameras and notebooks in hand. The main character felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. They stepped outside, greeting them politely, and motioned to the snowman, hoping to demonstrate that it was harmless and in good spirits. "This snowman is an issue," the president said, clearly frustrated. "It must be removed immediately." The main character tried to reason calmly. "It's temporary, it's made of snow, and it does not violate any clear, permanent rules. It's just a way to enjoy the winter season. We can discuss this calmly instead of escalating unnecessarily." The board members whispered to each other, clearly siding with the president, but the main character remained calm, holding their ground. Neighbors watched silently, some curious, some supportive. It was a tense moment, a standoff of quiet determination against rigid authority. As the group lingered, one of the neighbors, braver than most, stepped out and said, "It's just snow. It's not harming anyone. Maybe you're overreacting." The president's expression hardened, and she muttered something under her breath before retreating slightly. It was a small victory, a sign that not everyone agreed with her extreme enforcement of rules. The main character knew that standing firm and documenting every detail would be crucial in the days ahead. Night fell, and the snowman remained in the yard, untouched but watched closely. The main character went inside, feeling a mixture of relief and anticipation. They reviewed the photos and videos taken during the day, making detailed notes. Every interaction, every photo, every comment from neighbors was recorded carefully. It wasn't just about a snowman anymore. It was about standing up for fairness and documenting truth. As they prepared for bed, they reflected on the day. The snowman had started as a simple winter joy, a playful moment shared with children and neighbors. But it had become something more, a symbol of resistance against unnecessary control and a reminder that patience, calmness, and documentation could protect what mattered. The tension would continue, and the HOA president would likely escalate, but the main character felt prepared. The snowman, silent and cheerful, had become their quiet ally. Holding a space of joy and resilience in a neighborhood that had briefly forgotten the simple pleasure of snow, the next morning brought a crisp chill, and the snow from the previous day had hardened into a delicate crust, sparkling under the sunlight. The main character stepped outside, eager to check on the snowman and enjoy a quiet moment before any further confrontations. They noticed the neighborhood slowly coming alive with morning activity, neighbors walking dogs, children running to the bus stop, and a few residents shoveling driveways. The snowman, standing tall and proud in the yard, seemed almost alive, its scarf fluttering gently in the wind, while arranging a small snow pet near the snowman's base. The main character felt a shiver not from the cold, but from a rising sense of anticipation. They knew the HOA president had been watching, and it seemed inevitable that she would return. But what they hadn't expected was how far she might go to assert control. There was a part of them that wondered if she would come in person, or if she would send notices, neighbors, or even threats. By mid-morning, the crunch of boots on snow confirmed their suspicion. The HOA president appeared again, walking briskly with her usual intensity. Today, she had brought along a small measuring tape and seemed prepared to scrutinize every detail of the snowman. The main character stepped forward, trying to greet her politely, but she ignored the gesture and went straight to her work. "This snowman is too large according to the guidelines," she said, holding up the tape to measure the height. "You were warned yesterday, yet it remains. This could result in fines or further action." The main character glanced at the snowman. It wasn't exceptionally large, certainly nothing dangerous or permanent. "It's just snow," they replied calmly. "It will melt naturally. I don't see how this can really violate any permanent rule." Her eyes narrowed and she jotted something in her notebook. "Temporary or not, rules are rules. You've been given multiple notices. This cannot continue." Trying to remain calm, the main character stepped a little closer to the snowman. In the base of the snowman, hidden carefully, was something they had placed earlier, small. Sealed envelope with a note and some photos that documented previous overreach by the HOA president. It wasn't meant as a trap, but as proof in case the situation escalated further. The secret was safe, hidden in plain sight, and invisible to anyone who didn't know to look. The president crouched, inspecting the snowman, clearly unaware of the hidden envelope. The main character stood nearby, holding their composure, hoping this would remain unnoticed for a while longer. "You need to remove this immediately," she said, standing up again. "Otherwise, you risk serious penalties." "I understand your position," the main character replied evenly, "but I am confident this snowman is not harming anyone. It's temporary, and it's part of the winter season. We can discuss it, but removing it seems unnecessary." The president's frustration was evident, and she muttered something under her breath. Then she paused, as if considering the best way to escalate the matter further. But before she could act, one of the neighboring children ran up to the snowman, laughing and pointing at the small snow pet beside it. The innocence of the moment seemed to momentarily distract the president, though she quickly regained her stern focus as the main character observed the situation. They realized the importance of patience. Every action by the HOA president could be documented, every word recorded. They knew that any evidence of harassment or overreach could eventually work in their favor. The hidden envelope was a quiet preparation, safety net in case things escalated beyond polite disagreement. By late morning, other neighbors had begun to notice the tension. Some came outside to watch, whispering quietly among themselves. A few brave ones nodded at the main character, silently offering support. It was clear that while many residents feared confrontation, they recognized the unfairness of the situation. This small snowman had become a symbol, a quiet stand against unreasonable authority. Midday arrived and the sunlight reflected off the snow, creating a dazzling display. The main character added small details to the snowman's features, placing the carrot nose carefully, adjusting the buttons for eyes, and making sure the scarf was positioned just right. Each movement was deliberate, both for the joy of creation and as a subtle challenge to the ongoing scrutiny. The snowman seemed cheerful, almost defiantly so, as if it understood the silent battle unfolding around it. In the afternoon, the HOA president returned with even more intensity. This time, she had brought her camera and notebook, and she began photographing the snowman from multiple angles. The main character noticed a small group of neighbors watching, some from porches, others from across the street. Their presence was a reminder that the neighborhood was aware, and that overreach could have consequences beyond this single yard. "You must remove this immediately," the president insisted, her voice sharper than before. "This is not acceptable." The main character remained calm, standing beside the snowman. "I understand your position, but it's temporary. It's made of snow, and it doesn't harm anyone. Let's discuss this reasonably instead of escalating unnecessarily." Her expression hardened, but she didn't notice the envelope hidden in the snowman's base. The main character felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that the hidden proof would soon become important. It was a small, clever precaution, a way to ensure fairness and transparency if the situation worsened. As the day wore on, the tension continued. The president left briefly but returned, inspecting the snowman again, clearly frustrated that it had not disappeared. Meanwhile, the main character interacted with neighbors, sharing small stories about winter and the joy of creating something playful. The contrast between the cold, rigid enforcement of rules and the warmth of community connection became more apparent with each passing hour. By evening, the sky turned a deep shade of blue, and the neighborhood was quiet once more. The snowman, standing tall, seemed almost alive in the fading light. The main character reviewed their notes and photos, carefully documenting every interaction, every comment, and every moment of the day. The hidden envelope remained safely tucked inside the snowman, silent witness to the unfolding story. Night fell, and the streets were mostly empty. The main character stepped outside for a final look at the snowman, feeling a mix of pride and anticipation. They knew the HOA president would likely return, but for now, the snowman stood as a cheerful, defiant symbol of patience and preparation. The quiet secret it held was their safeguard, a reminder that even small acts of foresight could have a powerful impact. As they went inside, warming up with a cup of tea, the main character reflected on the day's events. The snowman had started as a simple winter creation, but it had grown into something more. It was a test of patience, a demonstration of resilience, and a subtle challenge to unreasonable authority. The hidden envelope was a secret, yes, but it was also a form of protection, ensuring that fairness and truth could prevail when the time was right. Before bed, they looked out the window one last time. The snowman, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, seemed almost magical. It was more than just snow. It was a quiet statement, a playful, yet determined stand against unnecessary control. The main character knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they felt ready. The snowman, cheerful and silent, had become a steadfast ally in an unexpected battle, and its hidden secret promised to reveal the truth when the moment came. The morning was colder than usual, and frost had formed delicate patterns on the windows. The main character stepped outside, taking a deep breath of crisp winter air. The snowman stood tall in the yard, now with a thin layer of frost sparkling on its surface. Children were excitedly making new snow creations nearby, and the neighborhood seemed alive with the quiet thrill of winter. The main character smiled, thinking about how the snowman had become more than just a simple decoration. It had turned into a symbol of resilience and quiet defiance. They spent the morning adding small details to the snowman, placing little stick arms and adjusting the scarf that fluttered slightly in the cold breeze. Every time they stepped back, they noticed how cheerful and lifelike it seemed. The hidden envelope inside its base, containing photos and notes documenting the HOA president's previous overreach, remained safe and unnoticed. It was a secret that could change everything if revealed at the right moment. By mid-morning, the sound of approaching footsteps signaled the arrival of the HOA president. Today, she seemed more determined than ever. She strode up the sidewalk with a sense of urgency, her notebook and camera in hand, and stopped at the edge of the yard, eyes locked on the snowman. "This must be removed immediately," she said, her voice sharp and demanding. "You have ignored previous notices, and this is now a formal violation. You risk fines and further action." The main character remained calm, standing near the snowman. "It's just snow," they replied evenly. "It will melt naturally. It's temporary and harmless. I don't see how this can truly violate any rule." She jotted something in her notebook and stepped closer to the snowman, examining every angle. What she didn't know was that the snowman's base contained the envelope with clear evidence of her selective enforcement of rules, and it was just a matter of time before that secret would be revealed. Curiosity and impatience began to get the better of her. She leaned closer, reaching towards the snowman's base, as if instinctively wanting to inspect it more thoroughly. The main character noticed the movement and felt a surge of anticipation. This was the moment they had quietly prepared for. Before she could reach the hidden envelope, one of the neighborhood children ran up, pointing at the snowman and laughing. "Look, it's moving," the child shouted, unaware that their words and actions distracted the HOA president just long enough. The president froze, glancing down at the child, and in that split second, the envelope shifted slightly. Partially exposed by the melting snow at the bottom, the main character seized the moment. Stepping forward calmly and picking up the envelope, "Perhaps you should see this," they said quietly but firmly. Holding it out for the president to take, the president's eyes widened in shock, stern expression faltering for the first time. She glanced at the contents and realized that the envelope contained undeniable proof of her previous overreach and harassment of multiple neighbors. Photos, notes, and documented interactions all showed a pattern of selective enforcement and misuse of authority. She stammered, unsure how to respond. Neighbors, who had been watching from a distance, began to gather, sensing that something important was happening. Some whispered to each other, others approached cautiously. The main character remained calm, letting the evidence speak for itself. The snowman, silent and cheerful, had done its part in holding the secret that exposed the truth. The president attempted to defend herself, but the words fell flat. The evidence was clear and undeniable. The main character calmly explained each item in the envelope, showing how previous complaints and warnings had been handled unfairly. The neighbors listened, some nodding in agreement, others expressing relief that someone had finally spoken out. It wasn't long before the HOA board was notified, and members began to arrive to investigate the situation. The president tried to regain control, but the proof was overwhelming. The main character remained composed, answering questions and presenting the documented interactions in an organized manner. It became clear that the previous enforcement had been excessive and targeted. The board could not ignore it. As the day progressed, more neighbors came forward, sharing their own experiences. The atmosphere shifted from tension to a sense of justice being served. The snowman, standing tall and untouched for days, had indirectly become a catalyst for exposing the truth. Its hidden secret had done what words alone could not achieve. By late afternoon, the HOA president was facing serious consequences. Her credibility was damaged, and she had to admit to the pattern of selective enforcement. The board discussed actions to correct the previous overreach, including reversing fines and implementing fairer guidelines for all residents. The main character watched quietly, feeling a sense of vindication, but also relief that the confrontation had been resolved without aggression. The neighborhood, once tense and cautious, began to relax. Children played again, neighbors greeted each other more openly, and the snowman remained a symbol of resilience and quiet justice. The main character reflected on the events, realizing how small, thoughtful actions could lead to meaningful change. The Snowman had held a secret that not only revealed the truth, but also helped restore fairness and balance in the community. As evening approached, the main character stepped outside one last time to admire the snowman. The sunlight reflected off its surface, creating a warm glow. They added a final small detail, a tiny stick broom in its hand, as if to say thank you for standing firm and holding the secret. The snowman had become more than a simple winter creation. It had been a silent witness and a powerful tool for justice. Night fell, and the neighborhood was quiet. The snowman, still standing tall, seemed almost alive in the soft light of the street lamps. The main character went inside, sipping a warm drink, feeling a mix of satisfaction and relief. The HOA president would have to answer for her actions, and the neighborhood had learned the value of patience, preparation, and standing up for what was right. Before bed, the main character looked out the window, thinking about how a simple snowman had brought a neighborhood together, exposed wrongdoing, and reminded everyone of the importance of fairness and courage. It was a quiet victory, one that would be remembered long after the snow melted, and it reinforced the idea that even small acts, when done with care and foresight, could have a powerful impact. The morning after the revelation was different from any other. The air felt lighter, the sunlight brighter, and the neighborhood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The main character stepped outside, noticing that the snowman, which had stood quietly through days of scrutiny and tension, still held its cheerful presence. Today, it wasn't just a playful winter decoration. It had become a symbol of fairness, resilience, and the triumph of patience. The HOA president, now facing consequences for her actions, kept a low profile. She no longer patrolled the streets with a stern gaze, and the previously tense atmosphere had shifted. Neighbors walked openly, children played freely, and a sense of community returned. The main character smiled, reflecting on how a simple snowman had grown into something far more meaningful. It had held a secret, yes, but more importantly, it had represented the courage to stand firm in the face of unfairness. Throughout the morning, neighbors stopped by, expressing gratitude and sharing their relief. Some brought hot drinks or baked treats, gestures of kindness that had been rare during the days of tension. Conversations flowed naturally, filled with warmth and laughter. And the main character felt a sense of belonging that was deeply satisfying. It was clear that the neighborhood had regained a sense of balance and fairness. The main character took a moment to look at the snowman, now slightly smaller due to melting but still standing tall. They added a few small details, adjusting the scarf and straightening the stick arms. It was a final touch, a quiet celebration of endurance and patience. The snowman had weathered scrutiny, warnings, and even threats, yet it remained, embodying the quiet power of preparation and foresight. By mid-morning, the HOA board members began arriving to discuss the next steps. They acknowledged the evidence that had been revealed and discussed changes to ensure fairness in the future. Fines that had been threatened were formally rescinded, and guidelines were clarified to prevent similar conflicts. The main character remained calm, providing information as needed and allowing the process to unfold naturally. It was not about revenge or punishment, but about restoring balance and fairness. Neighbors who had once hesitated to speak out now shared their experiences. Their voices, once quiet and cautious, joined together in a chorus of truth. The main character listened, offering support and validation. Knowing that these stories were important for healing and moving forward, the community felt stronger, connected by a shared experience and the reminder that fairness mattered as the day progressed. The snowman continued to attract attention, not from conflict, but from admiration. Children laughed as they added tiny snow creations around its base. Neighbors paused to take photos, celebrating a small victory that had broader implications. The snowman, once a simple winter decoration, had become a symbol of courage, patience, and the power of quiet action. By afternoon, the neighborhood was alive with conversation and activity. The main character spent time walking around, greeting neighbors, and sharing in the renewed sense of community. They reflected on how small actions, thoughtful preparation, and calm persistence could create meaningful change. The snowman had been central to this transformation, its hidden secret revealing the truth and helping restore fairness. The HOA president, now facing the reality of her actions, had retreated to reflect. The main character did not gloat or mock. Instead, they focused on the positive outcome for the neighborhood. It was a lesson in integrity, patience, and the importance of standing up calmly when confronted with unfairness. The snowman had been the catalyst, but the main character's composure and preparation had made the difference. Evening approached. The sunlight cast long shadows across the neighborhood. The snowman, now smaller and glistening with melting snow, still stood proudly. The main character stepped back, taking in the scene, neighbors talking and laughing, children playing, and a sense of peace settling over the community. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a reminder that small acts, when done thoughtfully and patiently, could have a significant impact. As night fell, the neighborhood quieted. The snowman, now a symbol rather than just snow, stood in the soft glow of streetlights. The main character went inside, reflecting on the events of the past days. They felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that fairness had been restored and that the neighborhood had regained its sense of community. The snowman's silent presence had reminded everyone of the power of preparation, patience, and quiet courage. Before going to bed, the main character looked out the window one last time. The snowman, slightly smaller but still standing, seemed to glow in the moonlight. It had held a secret that revealed the truth, and it had helped bring a community together. The lesson was clear. Even in the face of unfairness and scrutiny, calm persistence, thoughtful preparation, and quiet courage could prevail. The snowman had been more than snow. It had been a silent witness, a catalyst for fairness, and a symbol of resilience. The main character finally turned away from the window, feeling content and at peace. The neighborhood, once tense and divided, had found balance again. Children laughed freely, neighbors interacted openly, and the atmosphere was filled with warmth and trust. The snowman, melting slowly but still standing, had become a reminder of what patience, thoughtfulness, and courage could achieve. It was a quiet victory, one that would be remembered long after the snow had melted, and it left everyone with a sense of hope, unity, and the knowledge that standing firm in the right way could change everything, though the snow had begun to melt. Leaving small puddles and patches of bare ground, the neighborhood was buzzing with energy that had nothing to do with the winter season. The events of the past days had shifted the dynamics in subtle but powerful ways. People were talking more, laughing more, and noticing each other more. The main character stepped outside to take in the scene, observing children building new snow figures, neighbors sharing coffee on their porches, and the snowman itself, now much smaller, still standing as a quiet reminder of what had happened. It had been a few days since the HOA president had been confronted with the evidence from the SEO envelope. Her position had been weakened, and the board had begun implementing fairer rules and guidelines for the community. The main character noticed a different atmosphere when walking past her house. The tense, watchful eyes were replaced by a cautious neutrality. It was clear that the balance of authority had shifted, and the neighborhood was slowly reclaiming a sense of ease and freedom. The main character returned to the yard, crouching down to examine the snowman. They brushed away small bits of melting snow, adjusting the scarf one final time, and placed a tiny stick broom in its hand as a playful gesture. Though the snowman was no longer as tall or pristine, it retained its charm and significance. To them it symbolized resilience, careful preparation, and the power of small, thoughtful actions to influence larger events. Neighbors began to approach throughout the day. Some stopped to admire the snowman, commenting on its cheerful appearance and the clever little details. Others thanked the main character for standing up calmly and strategically, noting how their actions had helped restore fairness and community trust. Conversations flowed naturally, full of warmth, humor, and shared reflection. It was a sense of camaraderie that had been missing before, replaced by the tension and fear of unfair enforcement. By mid-morning, The children from the neighborhood had started a playful snowball game near the yard. The main character joined in briefly, laughing and dodging snowballs, feeling the pure joy of participation. It was a reminder that life continued, and that the challenges faced could be met with patience, calm, and a focus on what mattered most. The snowman stood nearby, silent yet proud, as if approving the light-hearted celebration around it. Throughout the day, the main character continued to organize and document small projects around the yard. While there was no immediate threat or confrontation, they remained mindful, knowing that vigilance was part of maintaining fairness. It was less about fear and more about readiness. Each action was deliberate, a small reminder of the importance of preparation and reflection in everyday life. By afternoon, a group of neighbors had gathered near the snowman, sharing stories and discussing how the past days had changed their perception of the neighborhood. They talked about how easy it was to feel powerless in the face of strict rules, and how important it was to stay calm and organized when standing up for what was fair. The main character listened and contributed, feeling proud that a simple snowman had sparked such meaningful conversations and connections. Later, the main character received a message from a neighbor thanking them for the way they had handled the situation. The note expressed admiration for the calm approach, careful documentation, and thoughtful preparation that had allowed the truth to be revealed without escalation or conflict. It was a reminder that courage didn't always mean confrontation. Sometimes it meant quietly preparing and acting at the right moment. The evening brought a golden light, casting long shadows over the partially melted snow. The main character stepped outside, reflecting on how much had changed in a short time. The neighborhood, once tense and divided, had regained a sense of community and fairness. Children played freely, neighbors greeted each other with warmth, and the air was filled with a quiet optimism. The snowman, now smaller but still standing, seemed to glow in the fading sunlight, a symbol of what careful, thoughtful action could achieve. Night fell, and the streets quieted. The main character took one last look at the snowman, noticing its small imperfections and the patches of snow that had melted. Yet, it still stood as a testament to patience, preparation, and resilience. They felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that standing firm, calmly, and thoughtfully had created meaningful change in the neighborhood. The snowman's presence, though diminished, continued to symbolize strength, fairness, and quiet courage. As they went inside, the main character reflected on the lessons of the past days. Small actions, thoughtful planning, and a calm demeanor could have a profound impact. The snowman had been more than snow. It had been a witness, a reminder, and a catalyst for positive change. It had helped to restore balance and fairness, strengthen community bonds, and teach a lesson in resilience and integrity. Before bed, they looked out the window one final time. The snowman, though melting, remained upright, and the neighborhood glowed softly under the moonlight. Children were asleep, neighbors were quietly settling in for the night, and a sense of peace enveloped the area. The main character felt content, knowing that the snowman had served its purpose. It had held a secret, endured scrutiny, and ultimately helped the community move forward together. The story of the snowman would remain, a quiet reminder that patience, preparation, and integrity could turn small, simple actions into meaningful, lasting change.